Are you a non-native English speaker who wants to speak English more clearly and confidently for professional, educational, or personal reasons? Are you an English speaker who wants to speak another language fluently for any of the above reasons? Our multi-talented and fascinating guest has been helping people do exactly that for almost 20 years.
Welcome to Admission Straight Talk, the podcast dedicated to graduate admissions and helping you approach the application process thoughtfully and successfully. Your host is Accepted's founder and world-renowned admissions guru, Linda Abraham. At Accepted, our mission is to get you to that unforgettable moment when you read your acceptance email and shout, "Yes, I'm in!" Confident you'll be attending the perfect program to help you launch the career of your dreams.
Welcome to the 446th episode of Admission Straight Talk, Accepted's podcast. Thanks for joining me today. Before we dive into today's interview, I want to mention a free resource at Accepted that can benefit you if you are applying to graduate school. The challenge at the heart of admissions is showing that you both fit in at your target schools and stand out in the applicant pool. Accepted's free download, Fitting In and Standing Out, the paradox at the heart of admissions, will show you how to do both. Master this paradox, and you are well on your way to acceptance. Download your free guide at accepted.com/FISO for Fitting In, Standing Out. Again, that's accepted.com/FISO. It gives me great pleasure to have on Admission Straight Talk for the first time, Dr. Christina Ball. A Fulbright scholar, Dr. Ball earned her PhD in Italian language and literature. In 2004, she founded BeSpeak Language Center to help people learn other languages. In 2012, she co-created BeSpeakEnglish.com, a one-on-one coaching and educational service designed to help international graduate students, especially those applying to business school, and working professionals strengthen their speaking and writing skills in the English language. She's also a writer and actress. Let's hear her story and uncover how she can help you. Dr. Ball, welcome to Admission Straight Talk.
Thank you so much, Linda. It's my pleasure to be here with you.
And I'm so glad you could join me. Now, how did you get into language instruction, the business of language instruction, both for Speak and BeSpeak?
Yes, well, I think it all started with my own passion for languages, my own interest in languages and cultures. My grandparents were both sets, immigrants from Poland and Italy. So I grew up hearing lots of Italian and Polish in the household of my grandparents. And so I think it all started there. And then just in my own travels and studies, I just fell in love with Italian, French, Spanish, all of the literature, and meeting people and hearing their stories and learning about culture. So real love of culture. And so Speak started around, as you mentioned, in 2004. I have an academic background, so I was a college professor before starting my business. Many people in my family have businesses, so I think I definitely have the entrepreneurial gene, let's say,
Right.
as well as the Italian and Polish.
My mother is Polish.
Yeah, I think we had that in common.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah. But I did not pick up Polish, no.
No, I haven't learned that yet, but I hope a trip there someday will inspire me to learn some. In any case, I was teaching in, at Yale, Wake Forest, and here where I live at University of Virginia. And then I just started to notice that not only my own desire to have my own language center, but people kept asking me, I'm not a student at UVA, I'm an adult, and I'm going to Italy. How can I learn Italian? So I just saw there was a real need for a language center. Like you have all over Europe, you'll find private businesses, which are language centers, teaching people all of the languages of the world, right? It's less common here in the US, where we tend to rely on universities to teach us, right? So 2004, I started a one-room Italian school called Ecco Italy. Ecco means like voila, or here it is. And I just had about 5 adult students and me as the teacher. And then over the years, demand for Spanish, French, German caused us to change the name to Speak Language Center in 2009, add online services, and now we teach 22 languages, as well as obviously English, and we just added sign language. So very exciting, yeah.
I was just talking to somebody who knows American Sign Language. Sign language actually differs in different places in the world.
It does. Yeah, I'm still learning from our sign language teachers about that. But yeah, even within different regions in the US, they have different signs. Yeah.
Wow.
So I hope to pick up some signs now that we have students learning it here.
Right. And I remember our eldest son and daughter-in-law, when they had their first child, they started signing with her, like just very basic things, because that way she could communicate before she learned to talk. Of course, she happened to be an early talker, so it was a completely wasted effort. She
Yeah,
just learned
isn't
how
that
to
great?
talk early.
Yeah, a lot of parents do this with their children, and
At least their first children.
I have a really smart dog, and she knows lots of signs like stay,
Really?
come, and yes.
Oh,
I
wow.
think
That's
sometimes she
interesting.
follows, they follow the visual cues more than they do the sounds, and so it's interesting. In any
Yeah, that
case.
is interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and then BeSpeak we started in 2012, as you mentioned. Again, a local connection. We have the University of Virginia's Darden School of Business here.
Sure.
We started hearing from some of their own graduate students from different countries, such as China, Korea, and they came to us on their own. I see you do English now. Can you help me? I'm struggling in my class, or I'm not getting internship or job interviews. Can you help me? So eventually we connected with the leaders at Darden and created the pilot program for BeSpeak, or Business Speak. Also, it was initially called BeSpeak, which is like, a bespoke suit, which means
All
tailor.
right.
But we changed it to BeSpeak because it was easier to understand, but we still focus on customizing each course to the students' native language and their challenges. So it all started with Darden, and we created our one-on-one coaching course and curriculum to support business students and help them with their, all of the challenges they might face. And then we eventually opened it up to different business schools, businesses, and individuals.
So, well, that's my next question. Can you tell us a little bit more about the more common language-related challenges that international students face in the U.S.? And then we'll get to the more custom parts.
I love that.
Sounds very interesting.
Yeah, because it's a little bit of both, right?
Right, sounds like it is.
We all need a suit, but we all have different styles and body shapes, and which is the beauty of language and humanity. So there are some common challenges that all international clients that we work with face. I would say one is the lack of confidence in speaking English in different contexts. Another one is understanding native speakers of English and being understood themselves. And the third one is, I would say, American culture, if they haven't lived here, worked here, studied here, and the familiarity with American culture, also our idioms, like, are we on the same page? Let's cut to the chase. And small talk. Making small talk is another.
We're going to get to some of that later. But yeah, those are common ones. All of them are.
Yeah, for native speakers too, right? Some, as you mentioned, I do acting because sometimes I was very shy as a child and lacked the confidence as a public speaker. So acting really forces me to get on the stage and do what really frightens me.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. And of course, the challenges that you face, though, would be for international students studying in the U.S., but they would also be faced by Americans going abroad for work or study or pleasure, for that matter.
Definitely, yeah.
In terms of confidence, knowledge of the native culture, idioms,
exactly. And we tend to focus on adult education, adults meaning 18 and up. Confidence, a lot of people think, oh, I'm terrible at learning languages. I was always bad at Spanish. And so that's the kind of mental attitude that we try to change through our approach, which is focused on, sharing meaningful content and talking about what interests the individual and what their passions are and what their motivation is. So
let's go back to BeSpeak. How does BeSpeak help students mostly, or any of its students, meet the three challenges that you just laid out?
Yeah, so let's talk about confidence first. That's a huge one. And when students sign up and they have to list their challenges on the registration form, that's always one I would say that 90% of them list. Yes, for sure. And so how do we help them build confidence? Well, I would say, first of all, by developing a sense of trust between the individual and their coach. All of our coaches are expert teachers and very nice people and very patient and warm. So I always look for that in my coaches. And so what they create on Zoom in their video conferences is a safe space. So the student and their client feels like they are able to make mistakes in their English and their word choice, and they won't be criticized. They'll be corrected and supported and taught how to do it. So I think that is, that trust relationship. All of our students say that really helped them. Oftentimes our teacher is the first person they meet before, as they're applying to business school or before they start a new job or business school. So that's their real confidant and their coach. That's why I like the word coach, even though we're all teachers, right? And then we also give them lots of practice. So practice your elevator pitch, practice your job interview, your admissions interview. So that builds confidence, right? When you're practicing, you've done it 100 times in different ways, you're going to be more confident. And then the second point was being understood and understanding others. And I think to be understood and to understand, you need to understand yourself. And in this case, what is your English like? What is your English language profile? Where are you strong? Where are your weaknesses? Is it pronunciation? Do you make a common grammar mistake constantly? You're always using the present tense when you should say the past tense.
So leaving off articles.
Leaving off the common ones that you hear and that we make and when we speak foreign languages. So so we assess everyone's English in the beginning in the first session, and we document in an English language profile, we call it, all of these strengths and weaknesses, and that becomes our roadmap to teaching them. So we help them, learn to strengthen these weaker areas, and also listening to the teacher. We assign listen to podcasts, TV shows, and Clubhouse, and all of those things to help them to understand American English. And then the third one is American culture. So that again goes with listening to podcasts, reading articles with your teacher, discussing them, practicing idioms, and practicing small talk. We always start with a little bit of small talk at every session, just based on current events or what's happening in the student's life and whatnot. So that helps a lot.
My parents were both immigrants in the late 1940s. And my father had studied English abroad and knew it well, but he never studied it here. My mother didn't know a word of English when she arrived in the United States, and she studied it only here. And she had been here, she came first. And when they met, my father spoke a very formal, rather stilted English, but he spoke it very correctly with a thick Hungarian accent, I might add, that he never lost. And after they were married, they were driving to California as their honeymoon. And they had a new car. They borrowed money from a relative, and they had a brand new car, and black 1951 Chevy. And they are a little bit outside New York City, which is where they were living or where they got married, and the car dies. Oh, no. And my dad said to my mother, and she remembers this very distinctly, said, "I hope we don't have a lemon." And my mom cracked up because it was the first time my dad had ever used any kind of slang.
An idiom.
An idiom, exactly. And it was so unlike him at that time. Obviously, he got good at it, but never lost the Hungarian accent. But he did learn the idioms, and it was very funny. But it stayed in her. I mean, again, it was 1951, but that is part of family lore.
Isn't that great? That was his first use of an idiom in proper context at the proper moment.
Exactly.
So much is the timing, and then some idioms are old-fashioned. So this is really.
Turned out there was nothing wrong with the car that a little gas wouldn't fix. And I actually remember, remember that car. No, there's nothing wrong with the car. They ran out of gas.
Needed a different kind of juice.
Yeah, exactly. But they were fine. And I remember the cars as a child, so it lasted, well over 10 years. I don't know exactly when it died, but
that's a great story. Died, I can't remember my grandparents, like my Italian grandmother who died at 102, and I'm named after her. She's Christina, but I can't remember her ever when she spoke English using an idiom. So it's nice that you have that memory.
Yeah. Again, he was perfectly fluent by the time I have memory, but at that point, apparently it was very unusual for him to use that kind of. Exactly. So yeah, all right, that's a little digression here.
No,
Let's
I
go
love
back
it.
to what BeSpeak does. You mentioned Zoom, so obviously you work with people remotely. Do you work only with students coming to the US or also students who want to study in the US or the UK or Canada or some other English-speaking country? Do you work with students still abroad before they enter the United States?
Yeah, we definitely focus on North American English, so it could be
Okay,
Canada or the US.
got it.
But yeah, we don't pretend to be experts in British English. I'm not that good of an actor to teach me. But no, none of our teachers have a UK experience or native speaking ability. So
Okay.
yeah, and there are so many great schools in the UK, I think, that do probably similar things to what we do. Yeah, so and definitely Canada and the US. Some of our teachers are from Canada as well. I'd say 3 or 4 of them actually, and a lot of amazing Canadian, especially voice coaches for the accent bit there that we've brought on board. So that's exciting. Yeah. But yeah, I'd say so. Anybody working with the US or coming to the US, I'd say would be our focus. So we work with definitely a lot of people now who are applying to business school and graduate school that we're helping them strengthen their English before they begin or before they apply. So they are definitely overseas, right? Although some may already be living in the US, but I'd say definitely the most are in Asia, Europe, Latin America. And then, yeah, we work with professionals. They could be working. We just finished with someone in the Middle East who was working for a U.S. company. So they were dealing on the phone with U.S. clients and just wanted to improve their speaking skills and listening skills, and also writing, email writing, and all of that. So yeah, so anybody working in studying in the U.S. or planning to do that.
Okay. What advice would you have for people who, let's say, studied English abroad? And let's face it, many students did study it abroad before deciding to come here, kind of like my dad, but they didn't really use it regularly. And they want to come to the US or Canada to study. How can they ease their transition?
Yeah, well, besides signing up for some BSPEAK coaching or some course with us, they could definitely just get back into listening, speaking, writing, reading in all of those ways or any ways that are possible for them. Nowadays with technology and the internet, obviously podcasts, you've got a world of listening right there on your phone. There's a podcast for any interest. Now we have Clubhouse where you can listen and talk and practice. So I'd say find those resources and work on what interests you, work on the field that if you're going to go into business, read more of those articles, watch TED Talks, watch videos and all of that. And definitely try to get the conversation help with a one-on-one conversation partner from the country, let's say from the US or Canada, that I'm sure you can find, if not online in your community, then online. So yeah.
All right.
And just follow your interests. I think that's like one of the main motivations that we find that really helps people stick with the learning. It's just like, what do you love to read? What do you love to listen to? Just indulge in that first, and you're going to build your vocabulary naturally and your skills that way.
Right, right, for
Yeah.
sure. I noticed that BeSpeak also has advice on email etiquette in the US. What are some ways that email etiquette may differ in the US from other parts of the world?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Of course, now it's like a texting is even more common than email. So a lot of the times with younger clients, we have to remind them that emails are not texts. It's a little more formal, like a letter. Remember letters?
Aerograms.
Yeah, yeah. But I think in lots of more formal cultures, we talk about like cultural communication, and there are like low context and high context cultures, and some
What
are
is that? I don't know what that means. What do you mean?
yeah, that's like, let's say, like in a country like Japan, where historically people have shared the same culture, language, points of references. They don't need to kind of repeat everything after a meeting, or there are lots of innuendos, lots of kind of suggestive things. Whereas in the US, where people tend to be from different cultures, we need to, let's say after let's say we have a meeting, we're going to, after the meeting, we'll say, this is what we discussed in the meeting, 1.1, point 2, point 3. And then I'm going to send an email to everyone repeating what we went over in the meeting. So that's an example of a low context culture. So a country like Japan is high context. A lot of stuff is just understood. A lot of meaning is understood. It doesn't have to be stated literally. Low context, you don't have a lot of things in common. So you have to, when you communicate with others, you tend to be very literal and say this, that, this is what we're going to do. So we always teach our students that, especially if they're coming from Asia, and that just, you might have to be more clear in your email. Why are you writing? What are you hoping to get out of this? Just state it just very clearly. And yeah, and then also, yeah, and just that we can be a little bit more informal when we're writing emails and the greetings and whatnot, and have a little humor. It doesn't have to be too formal and dry. But again, so much depends on context. So did you meet the person before? Have you met at a recruiting meeting? Is this coming out of the blue? Or, what, do you have someone in common? Put that in the subject line, that you were referred by your professor so-and-so, or met you at the coffee chat,
Fascinating.
So, yeah.
Really? Yeah, we work with international. I never thought of it like it, but it is fascinating. Yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. There's a great book called The Culture Map, which we love, and blanking on the author now, but it's I have it right over across the room, but
Making a note.
Yeah, this is a great book, all about different ways people communicate in different cultures. Some give, and it also relates to criticism, like how do you give people feedback? Some countries tend to be very, here in the US, we tend to sugarcoat. So sometimes people, like, they really want the constructive feedback, but they'll just say all the good things. And it's just like at the end, put in a little, but there's one area where you could improve, is this. It's just like other countries, like I think in the Netherlands, they're famous for just telling it like it is,
Really? Okay.
or in France, I think the author of this book, she lives in France for a period, and her son goes to school there. She's like, the teachers are always just saying what he does poorly, need to improve on this, or spelling or accent. And the child actually says, like, when he gets praise, it's just like, oh, I did really well, mama, and so he actually learns to enjoy that. It's not like you get a trophy for losing the basketball game.
You get a trophy for losing by the least, right?
Exactly. Come on, that's the American way. So the culture map is really great.
I've noticed that certain cultures seem to be more loquacious than others.
Definitely, yeah, Americans and versus, yeah, the definitely the Chinese clients that we work with are more quiet, and they're more quiet also in the business school classroom. The professors share with us, because it's not as common to be like, me, this is my idea, I'm going to raise my hand. I think especially in business school, there's that kind of that salesy communication style, that you want to get ahead and speak, and that is definitely different from the educational approach, and where there's more respect for the professor and your other classmates. It's like, so that we have to teach them that, no, you won't, the teachers want to hear your point of view.
If you started out with Darden, which is a case method school,
yeah. You have to share your opinion of that case, or your grade will suffer, but so that's that's definitely the case method schools definitely utilize BeSpeak, I'd say, the most.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, you also have a course, and you referred to earlier in the call, the teaching small talk and networking.
Yeah.
Again, what are some of the differences in the US and other places, let's say with small talk? I mean, we start talking about the weather all the time, especially in Los Angeles, where the weather never changes. But anyways, where...
That's right.
I'm looking in Los Angeles. But, what are some differences with small talk in other parts of the world?
Yeah, I'd say in Asia, again, which is the most extremely different, I would say, culturally from the US. The students always tell us that they never make small talk in a business context, maybe
Really?
only with their good friends and family. And that's why they always want to practice small talk with their coaches, understandably. And they're just not sure of the register, and how, they're afraid to be too informal and friendly, and they're not sure of the topics. So it seems strange for us that you'd have to practice, like, what are the acceptable topics, the weather, current events,
But not
what are you
politics.
doing today, what
Not
did you
COVID and
have for
not
breakfast?
politics.
No religion. I mean, COVID initially was like, well, definitely part of the small, because it's just
Yeah, it's everywhere, right?
so, but so we go over, like, what's appropriate and what isn't. And because for networking and even for admissions interviews, because we work with so many admissions departments at business schools, and they share their experiences and what they're looking for in an interview with us, so that we can help people get ready for those interviews. But often the students are trying to kind of repeat their whole resume in the 20 minutes and it's like, no, they already have your resume. They're trying to get a sense of how you are as a person. What's your personality? How will you be in the classroom? How will you fit in with the culture of the school? And so
they're also trying to get a
small
sense of,
talk.
yes, of fluency. Fluency is another.
Sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And if they can't understand you, of course, you might have a harder time getting in. You'll be waitlisted, or you might have to go back and improve your English and try again. So that's obviously where we come in handy.
And what about you? You also have a class on networking. Is networking an American thing, or is it something that's just done differently in different places?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we don't really have like an online class for that, but we work on, I'd say, networking skills, or just like general small talk and communication. And so we don't teach networking, but we help them develop the comfort and the ease in their communication skills and style that will make networking easier. But I think the schools that we work with have excellent career development, career offices that and have help with that as well. So we just support that more in the English and American culture side.
Okay. And, we've worked with many international applicants and students. And I think my staff and I have gotten pretty good at dealing with accents of all kinds, not just the Hungarian and Polish that I was raised with, but, Indian, Chinese, Japanese, all kinds of European, Middle Eastern, we definitely South American, we hear it all. And sometimes it can be extremely difficult to understand the person.
Oh, yes, I know.
And do you deal with accent reduction? I have any tips for accent reduction?
Yeah, we definitely find that many of our clients and students say that people are their classmates and their professors or their colleagues are having a hard time understanding them. And I always do a free consultation on Zoom, for BeSpeak. So I can often tell, because I'll be chatting with the individual, and it's just like, could you repeat that? Or I never make them, I never judge. It's just like, I'll just write a note of the areas which I had trouble understanding, or the pace. And so we find that especially a lot of people from India, they're fluent in English, and often were educated in English and bilingual, yet they speak at a very quick pace and with totally different intonation and rhythm with their language. So it makes it very hard for the American native ear to pick up the meaning. So yes, we definitely deal with accent softening and pronunciation. So we have a special team of about 5 voice and speech experts, a lot of them trained actors, and a lot of them, and so we pull them in for this special work that we do with our clients. as needed. Yeah. But
It
and
has
a
to do
lot.
with how you shape your mouth, right?
Yeah, definitely. And we also find that a lot has to do with listening. Like if you can't hear specific sounds, you can't make them yourself, which I've
Oh,
learned,
fascinating.
I've learned it just as a language student. I have to hear the Italian or the Spanish in order to, can you say that again? Okay, then repeat, listen, repeat. But it's not repeat, listen. It's listen, repeat. So a lot has to do with, the recognizing the sound in your ear before you can make it yourself. So that's the kind of work that our voice or accent coaches do.
Sure. So you really have specialists that work with individual students in different areas, whatever they need, right?
Yeah, I'd say our main BSpeak coaches can probably do everything, from the grammar and a little bit of pronunciation. But if someone comes to us and primarily wants to work on their public speaking and pronunciation and pace and intonation, then we have this team of voice and speech who also do experts who also do public speaking. And that could be anything from your elevator pitch to your interview to presentations. So it kind of it involves all of that public speaking or acting, if you will, type of technique that's very useful. Yeah.
So most of our conversation has related to non-US residents want to come to the US and speak English
Right.
more effectively. I'd like to turn the tables.
Okay.
Years ago, we had a guest over for dinner, and I don't remember what the context was, but she said something along the following lines. She asked the people at the table, what do you call somebody who speaks 3 languages? Trilingual. What do you call somebody who speaks 2 languages? Bilingual. What do you call somebody who speaks 1 language? American.
That's the best. The
Okay.
best.
And there is a lot of truth to that.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
All right. So, what are some of the challenges that Americans face in learning to speak another language? Are they different than, let's say, Europeans?
I love this question. Yeah. Well, of course, it's changing a lot, luckily, with all the influx of different cultures and language groups to our country, since, I don't know, the past 30 years, especially 30, 40 years in my adult lifetime. So, yeah, I would say it's definitely not a cognitive challenge. We're not any different in our in our ability or our anatomy or our cognitive ability than Europeans. So as you say, it's more of a cultural thing, and the fact that we've historically been this culture of a monolingual American culture. So, and it's just, so we don't have, now we have the ability where you walk around the streets of New York, or even I go to, the supermarket in Charlottesville, Virginia, where I live, and I might hear 3 or 4 languages. Of course, I go up and ask them where they're from, try to practice if I speak it. But yeah, so even my small town is very diverse in terms of the language. We have also we're a refugee town. So we have the IRC here. We're getting a lot of Afghans in the next few months coming, Afghans to resettle here. So a lot of Dari and Pashto speakers in any case. Yeah, but so I would say that the challenge is more just historically we have been monolingual and we haven't had a chance to practice. Like if you're, let's say the Germans or the Dutch are notorious linguists for speaking English better than many Americans, right? Because, they value language learning. They live in Europe. So if you want to go across the border, you're going to have to speak Italian or French or, Spanish. So, but in their schools, they really stressed, at least in countries like Germany and the Netherlands, learning multiple languages. And as I said here, we tend to just do it maybe in high school and college, and that's it, not as adult learners. So I love getting a lot of our students are in their 60s and 70s learning a language for the first time, or brushing up on a language that they studied as in college, and I just love that. And a lot of people in healthcare or in nonprofit work, just I want to be able to communicate with our clients, even here in Virginia or wherever they work, or speaking Spanish or Dari. So that's just the beauty of our melting pot culture that's just slowly becoming helping us become multilingual, I think.
I always wondered if part of the reason, I've mentioned my parents several times, they're both immigrants. My mother speaks 4 languages. My father spoke 7. Yeah,
7. Oh my
yeah.
goodness.
And even the year before he passed away, he read books in English, Hungarian, German, and Russian.
Oh
I
my
mean, like whole
goodness.
books. And he was already
Yeah,
in his
see?
80s at the time. Yeah. So, and he did not have a college education, neither of them. But they were from, in one case, the Hungarian-speaking portion of Czechoslovakia, between the World War I and World War II,
Right.
and in the other case, Poland. So I kind of always assumed that part of the reason that Americans tended to be monolingual was because the United States was so big. And of course, you have Canada is also English speaking on the northern border. Yes, Mexico is Spanish speaking. But you had such a large geographic area where English was the main language or only language. I mean,
Right.
that there wasn't the need, there wasn't the drive to learn a second language as there is in many places in Europe, where you have fairly small areas that speak, Flemish or a specific language, or Dutch or Danish or any of those languages. And so there was more of a push to learn more than one language.
Definitely. And historically, as is coming to the light now with the indigenous, Native American population that were forced to learn English and stop, they were punished for speaking their tribal languages. So I think also institutionally, and as our government has forced people, only English is good. If you want to be American, speak English. And my mom was raised, of course, by her Italian immigrant parents, speaking the dialect of Gaeta, which is between Rome and Naples in southern Italy. And it's the, typical, if you hear my grandmother speak and Christina, that's the cadence of the typical Italian immigrant on in the media, let's say, but they really spoke that way. And in other words, but it wasn't proper standard educated Italian. But regardless, my mom never spoke Italian to us. She didn't want us to learn dialect. So we would hear our grandparents speaking it, but we didn't really learn it. We were around it, but I had to learn in college. I had to learn Italian as an adult in college.
Really?
So because my mom wanted us to be American, she didn't, she was embarrassed of her of speaking Italian. In fact, when I actually married an Italian, and my husband's Italian from, Tuscany, which is where the standard Italian grew out of, writers like Dante and Boccaccio. And so it's very proper Italian. So when I got married, my mom was communicating with a lot of my husband's family, my in-laws, and was very embarrassed to speak her dialect Italian. So she'd, cover her mouth.
Oh, really?
Insalata, instead of saying insalata, she'd be insalata. She'd be like, "Oh, does that sound bad, Christina?" And I'd be like, "No, Mom, it's great. Just speak." So she was raised thinking, English is good if I want my family to be American. I'm not going to really say Italian on my that we want to fit in. So hopefully that's changing.
I think that's very much changing.
It's not changing educationally. We work with some children as well here, and the parents are always often frustrated by the local schools in at least in our area, because so many of them minimize language education, especially in elementary school. So if you don't get into maybe a bilingual Spanish-English program, which they have a few of those, but they're very hard to get into, then you just have to, the kids have to wait till late middle school or high school to start learning. And so, yeah, that's surprising to me.
Yeah.
If I were younger, I would start some kind of language elementary school that's all about learning languages and cultures. Private, kind of my own school. But yeah, that's
next project.
Maybe my daughter will do that.
Right. What would you have liked me to ask you?
Well, I loved all of your questions, and the last one, especially where we could share kind of our own personal upbringing. But I think there would be two things. One would be like what language would what language would I love to learn and why? And another one would be like, how is what we do at Speak and BeSpeak, definitely Speak, different from Babbel and Duolingo and those types of.
Okay, great. Answer both of them, please.
Okay.
You're making my job very easy.
All right. So, so I would love to, well, I speak Italian and Spanish, so, and French as well. I would love to become more fluent in Spanish. First of all, I was just listening to a Clubhouse like Spanish conversation before we got on. And so develop more fluency in Spanish. I really want to learn Arabic,
Really?
find it's a beautiful language and culture. I love the history and the poetry, and there are just a lot of people who are resettling here from Syria and other countries that
Sure.
I just find, and they are much maligned in some areas, in some ways, so that I want to show them that even if I can just say some basic things to them when I meet them here in my town, I think it would be a nice gesture. So Arabic would be the language I want to learn next. So my second question, how a lot of people will
How does BeSpeak and Speak Center, Speak language, right, different from Duolingo and Babbel, etc.?
Babbel is a little bit more conversation focused, but it is. So those are apps and they're great for supplementary practice, but you can do Duolingo while you're, waiting in a waiting room for your doctor's appointment or your COVID test or whatever. And you might build vocabulary and your child will learn to say the colors, but they won't actually learn how to speak the language. So I could develop an app or something, but for Speak, but I don't really see the benefit of that. So what we and other schools like us do that have human teachers teaching either small groups or one-on-one do is we really teach you the language and we teach you how to converse, and we incorporate your interests, your skills, your weaknesses, your goals into the process, and also incorporate lots of culture to make it interesting and relevant. So it's not just some colors you can learn on your phone and numbers. That has nothing to do with culture and really the human aspect of language. That's what we really believe in.
So, well, it seems like you're customized much more. I mean, it's like reading a book versus going to a tutor.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
But do you also have individual tutoring, but you also have small group instruction?
Yeah, we focus on the one-on-one, but here in Charlottesville is the only place we do the groups. And then, as well as online groups, so customized groups. So sometimes we'll get a group from a business school that we're working with, and we can do a workshop for them. However, especially for the BeSpeak, we find that people are so different, and they're also shy to make mistakes. I talked about the circle of trust that we create in our sessions, and they won't want to make mistakes in front of their colleagues or classmates. So but we do have group Spanish, Italian, French just here in Charlottesville at our center where I'm joining you from today. Yeah.
Right. That's great.
Yeah.
Anyway, Christina, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for your answers. Thank you for your questions. At the end, they were excellent. This has been just delightful. Where can listeners find you and your courses online, learn more about BeSpeak and Speak language centers?
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Linda. I've loved this conversation and I look forward to our next, even if it's not, hopefully it won't be recorded. We can just chat. It's delightful. So I'll make it easy for our listeners. Speaklanguagecenter.com is where you can find information about all of our foreign language programs online, of course, and in person in Virginia. And BeSpeakEnglish.com is our one-on-one English coaching program for professionals, business school students, and applicants.
And other grad school students also?
Oh, yes, of course. Any grad school, any area of study, of course, yeah.
Okay, great.
It's called BeSpeak, so I always think business school.
Because you started with business school, but I think we work with
people in STEM fields, engineering, I mean, anyone really. Even we have an architect, we have just all, we help people even with the TOEFL. So really you could be going into any area. English is English, and we do customize. So some of our online materials are more geared towards like the business context, but I would say 80% of it is for anybody.
Okay, great. All right, thank you very much. We're going to include links in the show notes at accepted.com/446 to BeSpeak and to the Speak Language Center. Listener, I want to thank you too for joining Dr. Christina Ball and me for our 446th episode. And a quick reminder, master the paradox at the heart of graduate admissions by downloading your free copy of Fitting In and Standing Out, the paradox at the heart of admissions. Grab your copy at accepted.com/FISO. Thanks again for coming. This is Admission Straight Talk, produced by Accepted, and I'm your host, Linda Abraham. I'll talk to you again next week.